that first year that we started selling those, we did 30,000 in sales. And we were like, oh my gosh, like we're retired.
Welcome to the Measure Success podcast, where we talk with top leaders about effective strategies that inspire success. I'm very fired up today to have our guest, Ashley Shaw. Ashley is a business strategist, performance coach who helps out entrepreneurs scale smarter, not harder. I know you've heard this before, by the way. This is like one of those things, but Ashley's actually done it. And she's done it in a real practical way. And of course, is utilizing AI as well to get this. So this is an episode you're going to really want to listen to if you are a business consultant, if you're on your own doing things, and even frankly, if you have a larger business. Ashley has done things. And what I also liked is how she's actually applied business and learned from it, like creating multi-billion-dollar businesses. She has been a president in a fitness company beforehand, has this kind of Alex Hormozy type things, experiences that she's done as well. But Ashley, welcome to the Measure Success podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Carl. I'm so excited to be here today.
Okay, so Ashley, let's start out with some of the fun things. You were born in a parking lot. Explain that, because that sounds kind of weird when you like go there.
I know it does. My mom went into contractions in a Gold's Gym parking lot. So luckily I was born at the hospital, but my foundation did start in the fitness industry. So all the amazing things about fitness, like the systems, the energy, the sales environment, and just really learning about reoccurring revenue was another big thing, part of that experience.
So you start out this, kind of coming in the industry, kind of growing up there. You find yourself in the industry, and I loved it where you were working, and then you mentioned you and your husband read the 4-Hour Work Week.
Mm-hmm.
And for many people, it completely changed their lives. But you actually did something about it, which is not what a lot of people do. So tell us about where you were before you read the 4-Hour Work Week, and then, because you like burned the bridges and did something completely crazy and did something next. So actually share about that, because I think this is an awesome story.
Yeah. So I was working at that time as a general manager at a Good Life Fitness in Canada. And we had just built our first house. And we had, at that point so this is 20 years ago, and we had put like 300,000 into this house and got our first mortgage. And I just remember going into the gym every day, kind of this Groundhog Day, coming home and really barely being able to afford what we were doing. We thought, this is the thing we need to do. And it was like, okay, is this really all there is? Like, this just seems like we're lacking something. We read the 4-Hour Work Week and we were like, perfect. We know what to do. We're going to sell everything. We didn't sell our house, but all our belongings. And we got on a plane to Vietnam, and we thought, okay, we're going to set up an office here and we're going to learn how to sell things online so that we can get our freedom back. And so we rented out our house, and we were English teachers so that we could keep a visa there. And we started scouring the internet for things that we could sell online and learning about that process of exporting and figuring out what life looked like living in Vietnam.
How long did you live there? Like, how long was that process of being? And that was a long time ago. That's when things were like a little rougher. Meaning they have not modernized. Like today, it's not so. If you may, the old term of third world developing country, right? Like
Yes.
There's definitely a lot more modern amenities. It wasn't that way 20 years ago.
Yeah, it was definitely different. Now, the silver lining of all of this is that when we moved, one of my dad's really good friends had been doing the same kind of, process. Like, he had a business there. So he was able to take us under his wing and show us around and make sure that, when you got on the back of a motorbike, like a Seom, like you knew the protocol of how all that worked. So we at least had some good mentorship when we were there. And then at that time we were studying. I remember the first video we watched, how to make your first dollar online, with Ed Dale. And, we were just trying to absorb as much as possible to learn, how do we put these steps together? So our day-to-day sort of looked like, we were free during the day, which was like totally different than what we had been used to, teaching in the evenings and on Saturdays, English classes. But during the day we were touring factories. We were trying to figure out, okay, what's this golden circle? There was this software back then. It was called Samurai. And it was so cool because it would analyze like, what are people searching for? What's a kind of a sweet spot in the market that there's enough search results, but there is room, there's not a lot of competition. So we ended up finding this product. It was buffalo horn scarf rings, like so random. But that first year that we started selling those, we did 30,000 in sales, and we were like, oh my gosh, like we're retired. This is all we need. Like it was just like we felt like we were retired, and it was like the best thing that we could have done for ourselves to get a taste of what that felt like.
That's fantastic. I mean, that takes such courage, honestly, to do things like that. Because this is now what I also liked what you said there. So I think it's one of the biggest misconceptions of the 4-hour work week. There's this belief that you burn the bridges and you only work 4 hours a week.
Mm,
And I think
mhm,
that's the least true, right? He's like one of the hardest working people there is, right? Like now he ended up doing all these crazy exercises and, doing around, traveling around the world and things, but he was a super high achiever. He did 4-hour work because he burned out, right? He felt like Groundhog's Day. And so he was like, I have to put people, process, and systems in place so he can have freedom to do what he wants to do, right? And so that's what I love it how you're like, hey, you're traveling on factories, you're trying to figure out like how do you make a buck off of this? And it's not easy, like making that first buck, and
mhm.
when you don't know what you're doing. So what was your first success point? What was that first thing that you figured out, hey, we can actually sell and become an arbitrage effectively, right? Sell it to other places, basically become an exporter, so to speak, right? To other places. So what was that? What was that thing or product that you were selling that ended up actually working?
Great question. And there's a couple of things that have come to mind, like with this. We in that experience, like we found what we loved
Mm,
doing, and it never felt like work. So that was like, I think part of the Timothy Ferris process, like, he's a human guinea pig and that's what he loves doing. So that for us was like actually acting upon, okay, we, probably like true entrepreneurs, like can't stop thinking about this. So we're just going to go and do this. But we had done a lot of different like looked at a lot of different products, everything from we were making like baby bed sheets and crib sheets, we were getting art custom made for people, like from pictures, and nothing was really scalable. It really required a lot of work, it felt like, the one-on-one sort of work. So when we came across the scarf rings, we had tapped into a demand, and that's
mm,
something we hadn't understood until it was so obvious that we were putting these scarf rings that we were getting for, like less than $1 and selling them for like 65 for like these 3 packs of like different colors, and like Hermes made scarf rings, and we were able to like tap into that. So that was really a first lesson of, it's not about creating demand, but it's about tapping into something that people already want to buy. And that was probably one of the most foundational lessons I ever learned in business from doing and experimenting.
So actually, I'm gonna comment on that for a moment. And if you want to have somebody who we both enjoy following, Hermosi, and I was kind of curious.
Mhm.
You mentioned yes, you've been following Hermosi for a while because you kind of grew up, so to speak, in similar type industries in the fitness industry and
Mhm.
entrepreneurship. But one of the things I liked what he said beforehand is if you're going to open up a business like a restaurant, where do you open it up? And most people say, oh, we're going to, put it on a busy corner, or, we're going to put it next to a McDonald's because we already knew they did the real estate activities around it. But what I love to say is, no, you actually want to put it in front of a starving crowd, right? And that's I think there's too many entrepreneurs, and I'm guilty of it myself. I remember my first consulting company, Carl J Consulting. Um, I was 24, 25 years old, and I was like, I'm going to be a consultant. I had no idea what I was doing.
Mhm.
And what ended up happening is I started doing people's taxes because that's what they needed.
Mm.
And I had this background in accounting. And so I was like, oh, I could figure out taxes and learn how to do it. Like that's literally how I started down that path. I started out in a totally different side of accounting, but I learned it because that's what was needed. And I think too often people get frustrated, like kind of the path you originally were of like, we're like, oh, I think we should be selling this, but you need to sell what people need, what they want, not what you think they want. The market will tell you. And so I love that insight that you had, which I think is so critical, behind all of
Mhm.
this. So, all right, so you move forward, you end up becoming if you may, growing up in the industry, becoming ultimately a president, of
Mhm.
a large organization.
Mhm.
So now you're kind of back in traditional business, right? Now you're, it's awesome, right? Because you're at a high level, you're a president of a company, and you're getting this good, you're getting this really good experience from a management perspective, but you're kind of there in the grind again, so to speak, right? So how was that like of like, here you are, now you're doing like what I call, traditional white collar, right? Business stuff. And so, but you end up leaving. And that's when you, right before COVID, you decided to go off and start what you're doing today. So talk about that transition of, because I think that's the other part of where people have like, when you were young, I don't mind to say this, but when you're young, you don't have a bunch of responsibility and stuff except your house.
Mhm.
It's kind of
Mhm.
easier to let go. But now all of a sudden,
Mhm.
you're a bit down the way. I'm sure you had more life, but you have more things, right? And more concerns, but you still left the comfort, so to speak, right, of a executive level job. So tell us about that transition and how were you able to do it, and how did that transition work out for you, not only from economically, but from a mindset perspective also.
Yeah, I think I was so fortunate because my dad always taught us how to live without a paycheck and
Mm,
depend on it. And that was a lesson that when we built that first house, I really learned that I didn't want a liability. Like I wanted things in our portfolio that made us money. And so when through my fitness career, we had moved to Nova Scotia and New Brunswick in Canada, and in every province, we bought a house and rented it out. So I had these foundations of, going back to like that first vending machine of this idea that if I buy something, I want to collect assets and not liabilities because then it gives me freedom down the road. So when that role as the president, I wasn't the president there anymore. There was that foundation of I don't have a huge mortgage payment because
mm,
I live within what I'm comfortable with. And there's also, kind of like that thermostat, that standard at which you allow yourself to live at. And I think for me, that thermostat was always like, if the bills can be paid by the income, coming in, then I feel safe to always do what I love and
mm-hmm,
chase that instead of being like, I have to do this. That was something that, in my career of building from, part timer to president of a fitness company, I really always want to do what I love. I follow that. That's one of my core values is to be able to like fully go into what I love doing because I'm always going to show up and be the happiest that I can be, which is the purpose of life. So when not that it wasn't like, you're thinking through all these things of like, is this the right decision? Should I stay in corporate? But I felt that I had learned what I needed to learn to
mm,
move into the next stage of my life. So
mm.
when I left and moved into building my own brand, I went back to the model that I knew, which was reoccurring revenue. So that's when I developed my social media content membership.
Okay, awesome. And I love, once again, the transition, because often what holds people back, right, from becoming an entrepreneur is resources, right, and risk. And what's interesting is what you did is a very wise way. Is like, if you have a lower standard of living, or you have already covered things because you figured out a way to get recurring revenue, or passive income, that's one option. The other option, which is not done enough, which is moonlighting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Have your core job,
Mm-hmm.
moonlight to get it off the ground so it's making
Yes.
enough money. I mean, the majority of my 7 businesses was done while moonlighting. I had a steady, paycheck, so to speak, from another business. And it's like, okay, now I'm ready to invest in this new business and move forward. Like, there's ways where you don't need to take money from other people, right? You just invest your time to help get that other thing going, right? So then you could feel comfortably like to move off to that. So I think that's a really, really good insight. So you have your new business now, right? So you
Mhm.
developed your coaching business and you're excited about this because you're a passion. You've been doing it, right? A significant part of your career. So what surprised you when you first got it going?
When I first got it going, um, I was very much because I love writing. I spent so much time studying and learning my ideal customer. And one of the things that I heard most recently from an ad agency in Australia, there's another guy I love. His name's Sabri Subri. And he talks about how the person that will always win and why he said they win all the time is they will spend like 5 days studying the ideal avatar so they know every thought in their head, all of their language. And I really feel that we don't, we skip over that part because we're so excited about the offer and all those things. But that section of doing that work paid off so much for me that every sales page, every piece of copy, everything was through their filter. And it allowed me to grow that business so quickly. So I think we underestimate how important that is and the power of tapping into that. Like just exponential growth is what I've experienced from investing that time there. So that was a big learning lesson in that phase. And I would say there's one other thing that was so crucial. We were doing about $10,000 inconsistently a month when I was first getting started. I was moonlighting before, like building my business. And then when I moved into it full time, so we're at 10K inconsistently a month. And I had hired a coach, and he was running masterminds. I was learning about ads, and although I had been in the fitness industry, I didn't understand what mindset really was,
Mm,
because everyone can be like positive and confident when things are going well. And I had seen a lot of brutal things in the fitness industry. Like if a club wasn't performing, I saw the worst of the worst. So I didn't really know, how do you become a leader in that situation where you need to turn things around, and being negative isn't going to fix that. And so that was probably, I would say, the biggest growth that I've ever experienced is how we went from 10K a month to 30K a month. The mindset expansion that needed to happen, like I became a different person
mhm.
between 10 to 30. And that was, I would say, I started listening to Joe Dispenza. I was introduced to his work, and all of a sudden I was no longer the previous Ashley. I was a seven-figure business owner in my mind. Like every cell in my body, I would say, turned over and changed. And I could already feel the gratitude. And it was amazing how fast that seven-figure year happened when that change occurred. So mindset, if we can call it that, I feel like it's a $5 word, but that would have been the biggest epiphany that changed my life at that point.
Yeah, I want to comment to both two things you said there. So why you do so much work in the ICP in understanding how your best customer prospect thinks is because when you do it well, they trust you,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um,
100%.
at its core, folks, why people buy stuff from you is because they trust you. And so when you write words in a way where you're mirroring their language, frankly, right, and understanding what they're going through and that they want that, right, you're solving a pain, you're creating a solution for them, and you go through it. That's why you do the hard work and energy and effort behind it. It creates trust. uh, so first of all, that's like huge. And then the second thing, I couldn't agree with you more on so many times when we work with businesses, whether it's small, even large businesses, uh, just one simple thing of just even how much they offer their price of what they're selling. It's probably the easiest way to increase the value of a business is just by
Mm-hmm.
raising prices because we're underpricing the value that we're actually creating. We see things in terms of our own cost and we don't put it in terms of the value that we're creating for our clients, right? or people who are buying our products and services. And so when we move towards there, and you don't have to, it's not always about what the competition is charging either, because they could also be undervaluing what they're doing, right? So I love that. I love it how it is. And you like said, it's like every cell of your body is like where you have to have this belief, because if you're like selling your product and service, and if you don't believe it, it's going to be sensed
Hmm.
by the person buying from you. They're like,
Hmm.
well, why would I buy from this from you? Because it seems like you're not even confident, on what something's worth, right? I love that. And, it's like for us, when we're typically closing a deal, we have nearly around a 70% close rate. Why? It's because we know what we do works. We know we create value. And so, like the other day, actually, we had a client where they, like, I want to pay what I paid last year. This is our 40 accounting business. And they're like, oh, I want to pay last year. It's like, well, why are you leaving your last accounts? They're like, well, because they're not talking to us. It's like, okay. And then we through just verbal conversation, we recognize that thousands of dollars that they're leaving on the table, just certain things. Like, so why should I pay what you be paying with the last tax accountant paid you? Right. I mean, it's silly. It's like we are actually creating more value for you, and we're still fairly priced and all that type of stuff. Right. But it's amazing, once again, where we'd be willing to match a price or do something when once you have enough confidence, you're creating enough value, you can get that premium value for what you're worth. So the
Hmm.
next part of what you've done, which I love, and we've been able to do it. I love the number that you're about to share here in a minute. But forgive me, everyone who's listening to this. This AI thing's really big. So, but you've actually figured out how to use it in a profound way to significantly reduce the cost of your business of applying AI. I won't share the unit, share the number. Actually, you share the number. How much money have you been able to save in your marketing, sales process, et cetera, by applying AI to your business?
This was based on our metrics from last year. So I don't even know what we've saved this year yet, but it was 384,000 per year. And that was like really in one department, marketing.
That's bottom line. That goes straight to your bottom line. I mean, you're so much more profitable, right? Because you're not paying those fees, et cetera. So obviously, explain how did you do this? How did you come about figuring out that you can apply this and use it, and because this is exactly what, as entrepreneurs, we should be trying to master as soon as possible, right? To make ourselves more profitable.
Yeah, so I think that there's two things I'll touch upon here. One is the wearing the CEO hat, and then the other is results as a service.
Mm.
And that was coined by my good friend Felicia Baker. So, let's talk first about wearing the CEO hat. There are really, as we all know, only so many things that you can handle in a day. And as a CEO, sometimes it just feels like the to do list is continuing to get longer and longer. I really believe that with AI, it's about taking our intellectual property, the way that we think, and being able to download that, whether that is with a GPT or something that can start to help take off that load, because there is decision fatigue. There is, how many times you find yourself either having the same conversation or trying to do the same repetitive processes over and over again. That's really what I started with. When it came to, we run traction and EOS in our business. It was like, how many times am I going to sit down and go through this process when I can really just take what I'm thinking and build out a GPT that can help me along the way? Repetitive processes like that, I really found that chat GPT and creating your own little tool to go through those things, everything from writing emails in my tone and my voice, or my customer service team handling things in a way that, we use Lester. This is the way that we, listen, echo, sympathize, thank them, evaluate, respond. Like, I don't want to have that conversation more than once. So if I can build a tool that can help run the person through it, and then they can come like solution first back to me, that's going to save a lot of time and just decision fatigue of doing things I don't want to do over and over. So I really started from that perspective of how do I kind of clear the CEO plate first.
Mm.
Then I moved into marketing because that's one of my favorite things is the psychology behind marketing, writing, how all of that stuff works. And so starting to come up with a method that could do the dream customer research. It could go like scour the internet and do all those things that we needed to have really tight messaging and to build trust. Because as we were talking about earlier, we're in a trust recession. Like trust, business is the speed of trust. So if we can really nail those things in our marketing message, it's going to make everything else so much smoother, whether it's the cost of acquisition or, how long it's taking us to make back our investment, that payback period. So it really helped smooth out that marketing process, which allowed us to acquire customers so much quicker. So once I started dabbling in GPTs, and I guess, at the core of it, I do have that prompt engineering sort of thinking. Like I know what I need to do to have the GPT work for me and really get efficient answers. A lot of times, I think people waste time in AI because they go to it as a tool, like we talked about. It's like, uh, asking it how to do something. But when it has context, when it has examples, it can only wear one hat at a time. So it needs to have, like, I'm a researcher, or, like I'm acting as a traction consultant right now. Like it really needs to have a specific role and specific context to be able to work really efficiently. So I think just being able to speed up processes when it came to those different departments. So after I'd handled like the CEO tasks, I then moved to department tasks to be able to really offload and put that background into the GPT. And then we started building AI tools that would stack together those processes. Because it's one thing to have, like, okay, I know how to do the dream customer research, but now I want to take it in and I want it to audit all of our offers based on that research. So then we started to create tools that would help us connect the processes together.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I love it how once again you've taken it, you continue to the right term is stacking, right, on terms of using additional parts around it, and then once again it's creating value. And I think that that repetitive process, but when you get to the next point, which you actually start creating value, you already mentioned several $100,000 a year. So are you helping now your clients to help apply these concepts to help their own businesses out?
Yeah, what I think of us that we do now, and this is, AI is just moving so quickly. So there's the process of helping people take their IP and create it into a GPT. That's like more at that beginner level. But then this results as a service because AI now has filled this gap of information. Like we are not at a loss for information anymore. So I feel like there's this transition happening of it's not enough to just coach people with information. You have to get them results.
That's right.
So I really believe
Yep.
that the next phase of this and what we're building and what we have in our business, like we've built an AI tool, it's being able to help people skip having to go through a course, having to go through a bunch of different information to get a result. Instead, it's taking all that information, having it in the back of your AI tool, and helping people execute so that they can actually get real results quickly.
Yep. Yep. No, it's you're exactly heading in the right direction. And it's really powerful, right? Of when we move through this. And once again, for those who are listening, once again, whether you have a small, you're a solopreneur, or whether you have a larger end business, I don't mean to scare people, but like if you're not already doing this, you're falling behind. Um, your cost structure is behind, your speed to market is behind. I mean, we're trying to like scream, and as loud as we can to people, like, you got to move now. It's
Mm-hmm.
the analogy for me is like, hey, there's a tsunami that's coming,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the early stages of the tsunami, and you cannot be faster than the tsunami. But hopefully, you have this like little tow rope, and you're just in the back end of that tsunami, right? Not you don't have to be in the forefront because you're not going to be. It's like you're fooling yourself, right? To think that you're going to be ahead of the curve, but if you're hanging on, because if you're not on top of that energy wave, you're going to get swallowed up, right? You're just literally going to disappear. I'm seeing this with businesses already where PE backed companies are wiping them out. like meaning
Mhm.
they can't
Mhm.
even be found on the internet anymore, right? And they don't. They're like, oh, all of a sudden my demand for my business went away. Yep. Right.
Yeah.
Yes, it
Mhm.
did. And if you
Mhm.
aren't creating content, I mean, actually, there's a reason why you're on this podcast. Yes, it'll help you out with get clients, but it's also creating content, because if you aren't creating content, you're not going to be seen in the engines, right? Um, these aren't mistakes; these aren't accidents. There's a reason why we've done 200 episodes, right, of this. This is part of our future to be relevant, right, as a leader, and to help at the end of the day, to help you listeners of it getting behind what's taking place. So I'm kind of curious today, because this has been super fun hearing about your story and what you've done. So how do you measure success with your business and with clients today?
There's a combination of the numbers that, that provide security and stability for our family, like having 2 young children, having consistent, predictable, reoccurring passive income to allow us to we go to Hawaii every year for 5 to 6 weeks. We go out east in the summer. It really financial freedom that allows time freedom is one of the core things that of how I measure my day-to-day success, that I can spend that time with my kids and my husband, and we can travel at the drop of a hat. The other piece is, how much am I enjoying the work?
Mm.
Because I feel like we all have this energy gauge and we feel it, when you're doing something that you're like, this is not filling my tank at all. In fact, it's retracting from that energy. The more things that I can do, the more educating, the more I love coming on podcasts and meeting people and being able to learn from them and share some of my story. Those things really help fill up the tank. And that's where I feel AI is really such an incredible tool, is helping to take things off the plate that don't fill you up. So when I have those 2 things and using that as my dashboard, I feel like I have boundless energy in my life, and that's how I would measure my success.
I want to be really careful with this next statement, because it's not it's an observation, and it's one of the reasons I love to work actually with mothers.
Mhm.
Is when especially if you're staying at home and you're taking care of them, just as an example,
Mhm.
right? Your need to be efficient is so important, because you have these really important humans that are your children that you're trying to take care of. And so the need to have technology, or the need to be efficient, is extraordinary. And so you're not going to screw around, for lack of a better term, on things that aren't important, because you already know where your priorities are, right? And so we have this tendency often, right? And as opposed to somebody, I don't, if I'm at work all day long, I'm just saying of myself, right? And I can be inefficient, if you may, right?
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
of
Mm.
there isn't necessarily demand, because my wife historically has been taking. I'm just saying in this
Mhm.
specific
Yeah.
case. So I
Mhm.
loved it how you help create some of this, so you can be more present as a mom, more present as a wife, and at the same time have a successful business. So I'm curious now, what type of habits have you created so you can continue to be your best?
That's a great question. I really look at time as the one thing that I cannot outsource, like in terms of I cannot get more of my own personal time. And so, when I first became a mom, the first thing that I did is I got an au pair to help us at home, because there, especially in those first couple of years, there's so much demand. And to be honest, like, I mean, I don't know what parent really can mentally prepare for that. But I found that there was so much saving grace in being able to have somebody there and help us with the day-to-day activities, that I can choose the things that I want to be really present for. And, there are other things like keeping the house clean and, different tasks that I just want to be able to outsource so I can get more time back. So I would say, really looking at time as that one thing, that if you can pay someone to do something where you can put your effort into something that makes you more money, or whatever it is that you're working on, it's not all about money. We know that. But I really think that there is an equation there that a lot of people, there would be certain times in my life where it was like, oh, like, can I afford to do that? Well, what else can you be doing with that time and investing in that ultimately you can get that money back. You can't get that time back. So that's been one of the skills that I learned at a young age. My parents always had, a nanny around, and I saw how they were able to grow their businesses and be present. So that's something that I will not go without in our house.
So how do you now measure success in your personal life?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, I would say that it is the quality of my relationships, not only with my partner, but I, being an entrepreneur, can feel it's definitely felt lonely, especially when you work from your house. And so the quality of the relationships that I have with girlfriends, with other friends in the area, it's all about the quality of those relationships. And again, it comes back to there are certain relationships that bring you up and certain relationships that I know right away. These are not relationships I want to maintain. There's a certain vibration that you get on when I want to keep my mind clear and focused and on abundance. And, I'm very boundary oriented now. I really only keep people that are in that same vibration in my life. And that I think helps maintain the energy that I want to have in my personal life.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Great answer there. So what is you've mentioned many mentors that have helped you out along the way, whether you've hired them or watched them, et cetera. Is there a book that has been really transformational for you that you typically recommend to others?
One of my favorite mentors is Joe Dispenza. He has a great, he's got lots of books, and I wouldn't say specifically that they're very thick. So if that's your thing, awesome. But his meditations for me have been really, really life changing. And I had a coach once say to me, if you've never done a 45-minute meditation, you've never really meditated. And I was like,
Mm.
oh, that's cool. The first time I did one of his meditations, it was one of the 45-minute ones. I literally, this was before I had my daughter. I had 2 failed pregnancies before her. I saw my daughter in my meditation. So I was like, I am
Wow.
hooked. I will do this forever. I think that his work, and he has a series on YouTube called Rewired, learning how to rewire your brain and your personality, that has been the most influential thing that I've ever learned, and I would recommend it to every person listening.
Ashley, how can people connect and learn more about what you're doing?
I would say the easiest place, you can go to my website, ashleyshaw.ca. I also am on Instagram at the Ashley Shaw. And on both of those pages, there'll be obvious places that we can connect there and learn more about what I do.
Ashley, this has been this has brought me energy. It's been a lot of fun having you on. I love your entrepreneurial journey and how you've been able to capture so many what I call critical success paths, which has gotten you to where you are today. I'm proud of you. Good, congratulations to where you're at today.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much for having me. This has been, like, energy wise also, like, such a great conversation. I really appreciate you, Carl. Thanks so much.
And to everyone who's listening, I encourage you to go out, check out what Ashley's doing. She's, we always try to bring on people. It's not easy to get on the show anymore. We reject over 75% of the people who come on. It's even getting higher than that each day as we get more and more people try to be on the podcast. And so Ashley's one of these top professionals that knows what she's doing. I encourage you to go to our website, whether ashleyshaw.ca, or go onto Instagram as well, to hear for what she's doing, follow what she's doing. If what she was saying is resonating, check her out, follow what she's doing. And to everyone who's listening, I just always like to say, thank you so much for making us the podcast that we've been able to come. If it wasn't for you encouraging us, following us, and continue to help us get great guests, we would not have become the 4th best strategic planning podcast out there. As we always like to say, wishing you the very best at measuring your success. Have a great day.